Hey everybody, it's Monday, November 4th, 2024. Welcome to the NFL Fantasy Football Show presented by Uber Eats. Get game day deals all season long. It's me, your man, MG Marcus Grant, joined by Michael F. Florio and Laquan Jones, and we are ready for the real grind to begin. We are almost through 9 weeks, Florio. We are as far from either shore as we're going to be. How are we feeling at the midway point?
Sad a little bit. Look, the first 8 weeks have been really rough for my fantasy teams, but I always get sad when we still got a lot of season left to go, but the closer and closer we get to the end, the more I'm like, oh, this is almost coming to an end, so enjoy it while it's here.
Yeah, I mean, how are we feeling at this point, Laquan? Are we ready to go for the back half of this thing?
I'm ready to bring home the gold in some of my leagues where I'm happy or where I'm sitting at record-wise, but the rest of the other teams we just don't acknowledge. They're bad. They're in the past. Whatever. We're good. So, but I'm looking forward to the main teams that I got right now in this playoff run.
I've just decided that really what I'm focused on is giving advice to other people because it's not working out for me on a real team by team level this year. This honestly is maybe one of the worst years I've had in fantasy. So now I'm just going to focus on trying to be good for everyone else and trying to help everybody else's teams. To that end, we got a lot to talk about today. We will have our biggest takeaways from week 9. We will dive into the waiver wire, plus some fantasy mulligans, some things we sort of swung and missed on, whether it's this week, whether it's this year, however you want to define it. And, we'll get some do-overs on that. But let's start, as we always do, with some fantasy headlines. And coming into Monday, there were 6 teams across the NFL that had a 2-7 record. 2 of those teams made major coaching shakeups. We will start in Las Vegas, where the Raiders have fired offensive coordinator Luke Getsy, as well as 2 other assistant coaches. So Antonio Pierce making big shakeups there. However, Pierce also said he is not ready to name a new play caller, nor is he ready to name a new starting quarterback. So Florio, I mean, maybe it's been trending this way for a while, but have we reached the point where it's pretty much just Brock Bowers and nobody else in Las Vegas?
We're getting close to that. I would say it is Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, and no one else in fantasy, because you look at what Jacoby Myers has done as of late. 11 targets yesterday. He has 7 or more in now 5 straight games, and in each of those games he's at least 50 yards. So you're talking about him bringing a safe floor and some ceiling. Like, we saw a pretty high ceiling each of the last 2 games out of him as well. But yeah, they're now using 3 different running backs. It was Amir Abdullah who led them in snaps and targets this week. Alexander Madison led them in carries, but Zamir White got the goal line work. So in that type of backfield, you cannot trust any of them. So yeah, 2 Raiders. And so, Marcus, this is something that I know you and I have spoke a lot about off air. Like, Antonio Pierce was the right man for the moment last year, but in my opinion, they needed a smart offensive mind to keep this thing going, and they did not get that with Getsy. So yeah, it's looking pretty rough right now for the Raiders.
The Zamir White touchdown, I think, had everybody in fantasy wanting to smash their head into a wall, because it was like, we weren't really leaning on the Raiders running game, but Zamir White, we felt like, was pretty much done at this point, and then he shows up and scores a touchdown. This also sort of feels like Antonio Pierce trying to scapegoat a little bit to save his own job, but it does feel like that is coming to an end as well. The Raiders had to turn to Desmond Ridder on Sunday to finish out that game against the Bengals while they were getting blown out. Meanwhile, over in New Orleans, Dennis Allen is no longer the head coach of the Saints. They lose to the Panthers on Sunday. They're at 2-7. It was just Carolina's second win of the season. On top of that, Laquan, Chris Olave left the game early, took a really nasty hit, suffered a concussion. The early indications are that he was not going to be ready for week 10 coming up. How much longer he's going to be out still is an open question at this point. But now in New Orleans, is it just Alvin Kamara and nobody else with this Saints offense?
Yeah, pretty much of who you can trust on a week to week. I mean, they put up 155 rushing yards with Alvin Kamara, and they still lost the game. Like, there's really no real hope, outside of looking out of Alvin Kamara, just based on you can't really trust anybody out there and who's going to be out there staying healthy. I mean, Derek Carr likes targeting his tight ends, but multiple tight ends have touched the ball when it comes to Derek Carr targeting them in the red zone. So it's not really like you can pinpoint who's going to be your guy in this offense. And honestly, this offense offense is terrible. They fell off a cliff since week 3. I mean, those 7 losses, those are big losses for that offense that can't get anything going. I mean, Derek Carr, he was injured, but we know what we're getting out of Derek Carr. And as you can see in these highlights, overthrown passes and not being able to connect with wide receivers on a consistent basis. And, Dennis Allen gets the boot. Last time he was a head coach, he got the boot, and his quarterback was Derek Carr. So here we are again. So we kind of saw how this all played out before, and here we are, in week 9, and he's canned. Sacked, I should say.
Sacked. Yes,
he's
of
been
course.
sacked.
Time is a flat circle. Apparently, with Dennis Allen and Derek Carr, 91 points combined in their first 2 games. Now in this 7-game losing streak, they've scored a grand total of 116. Yeah, it is bleak there in New Orleans. We'll see if this helps the offense in any way. I'm sure you guys both saw Michael Thomas had a lot to say on Twitter on Sunday about the quarterback of the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah.
Can't guard Mike. Apparently you can't guard him from saying just wicked things on Twitter about the Saints starting quarterback. Anyway, a couple offenses though to keep an eye on as we get to the back half of the season with coaching changes happening. May not be the last in-season coaching change we have to talk about on this show. All right, that's bad. Let's get to some good things. It is time now for Fantasy Heroes presented by Subway. Taking a look at the top scores so far in Week 9 with still 2 teams left to play on Monday night. Jalen Hurts doing it big against the Jaguars, 230 passing yards, a couple of touchdowns, also 67 rushing yards and a score, nearly 30 points for him. Saquon Barkley doing Saquon things, 32, almost 33 points for him. And that's after losing a fumble. Could have been an even bigger day for him, but a pair of touchdowns, 1 on the ground, 1 through the air. Jackson Smith in Jigba shows up seemingly out of nowhere, 7 catches for $180 and 2 touchdowns, 37 points for JSN. Mike Gesicki, 5 catches, 100 yards, and 2 touchdowns against the Raiders. That's 27 points right there. Cairo Santos with 3 field goals for 13 points. And the Rams defense getting it done against the Seahawks. 7 sacks, 3 picks, including a pick 6, 20 points allowed. That ends up being 20 points for the Rams. So, as we take a look at that, I know Laquan very fired up about look, they played well, no doubt about it, and they are hot right now. They are 100% hot baby. Right now. Anyway, non-Rams talk. Anybody else that you like as a fantasy hero this week? And somebody on menu, off menu, go wherever you like.
Listen, Mike Gesicki, big Jersey, another Jersey guy. I love to support my guys, but he showed up and showed out. And again, he's a guy that's been living on the waiver wire these past couple of weeks, and he's been stepping in when T. Higgins isn't out. If T. Higgins is not on the field, I'm playing Mike Gesicki for the rest of the season because T. Higgins, obviously, he's the focal point, the second wide receiver in this offense along with Jamar Chase. But Mike Gesicki, man, he's been showing up in the times that T. Higgins has not been available. So therefore, honestly, I love that they're still supporting the National Tight End Day all the way into the next week because 4 different tight ends touched the ball yesterday. And it's like, okay, Mike Gesicki, he's going to be the alpha of those tight ends. So shout out Big Jersey, Gesicki, get those tutties.
Well, and shout out to Gesicki for being ready for the opportunity because it seemed like the Bengals wanted Jermaine Burton to really have his opportunity. Then he misses a meeting on Saturday, ends up being a healthy scratch, sort of as a disciplinary measure by the Bengals. So Mike Gesicki stepped in and look, it's a lesson, not just in the NFL, but in life. If you are not ready for your opportunity, somebody else probably is going to be. Florio, I thought coming into the weekend that Saquon was going to go big. I know I'm not alone in this. It's Saquon Barkley against a bad defense. But, man, Saquon Barkley went big this week.
Yeah, he most certainly did. And I think you can argue right now the only running back you'd rather have in fantasy than Saquon is Derrick Henry. But there is an argument even to be had there because what Saquon is doing is so special right now. And this play that you are watching right now got such an audible reaction out of me, and it's a reminder that like we watch football because it is fun and it is awesome. And if we're talking fantasy heroes, how could I not go with a guy who did something that you only see in superhero movies or kung fu movies? Because that's exactly what he just did right there. So yeah, if you have Saquon, you are feeling great right now. You are planning room where you're going to put your trophy or whatever because he is just absolutely balling out right now. Perfect fit for him and for Philly.
Oh man, that play was mind-boggling. I mean, like how a human being pulls that off
bro.
in real time at real speed against other professional athletes was just an incredible thing to see.
He touched his
For
toe.
me, yeah, I just how do you do that? I don't get it. I go with Chase Brown as a big fantasy hero this week, and we have been sort of waiting for the Chase Brown takeover to happen. I mean, Zach Moss being less than 100% certainly aided in that, but Chase Brown really has been getting more and more opportunities in the offense as the weeks have gone on. This week took full advantage against a bad Raider defense. Season high 26.7 fantasy points. First time he's been over 100 rushing yards this season. Also had a receiving touchdown. Really was a do-everything guy. And it sort of shows you that when there is just one guy in this Bengals backfield, that player can actually eat and be productive. I think some of the problem for us in trying to pick a running back is that you have two guys who are sort of getting similar opportunities, and neither one of them was doing enough individually to feel confident in putting them in our lineups regularly. So those are some of the things we learned from the weekend. Meanwhile, as we go and look at a bigger view, kind of a wider view of this thing, Laquan, what was one of the big things you took away from this past week?
Bryce Young playing better, and honestly, this means a ton for the fantasy wide receivers over there that are relevant when it comes to Jalen Coker, when it comes to Xavier Leggett. I really feel as though now he has these back-to-back games where he's shown improvement. He's been playing completely better than he was in the beginning of the season, and only to mention that, looking at that Denver Broncos game that he had last week, he really looked good in the pocket. He looked comfortable, and when you have the run game doing their part as well with Chuba Hubbard, which is great in this 1-2 punch, Bryce Young's able to actually sit back there and get his wide receivers the ball and get these guys fantasy relevant. And I think when you have Xavier Leggett, how he's been playing, he's starting to heat up and coming to his own. The fantasy playoffs are around the way. Jalen Coker and Xavier Leggett are guys that I'm having stashed as potential wide receiver 3/flex players, man. I'm telling you, Bryce Young is going to keep on improving as the season goes on.
Yeah, I mean, he's looked good. And I went back and watched some of that game the week before against Denver, and you could see moments of it. And it just looks like he's getting more comfortable. I mean, who knows? Maybe sitting on the bench for a few weeks actually did some good. But
maybe it worked.
He's actually turning the corner. Maybe it worked. I know the numbers aren't spectacular, but it's definitely an improvement from where he was. And as you mentioned, it certainly helps the receivers there as well. Florio, what are you learning? I guess something also about quarterbacks who were benched, huh?
Yeah, because I think there is a trend where quarterbacks are being given up on too early in the NFL right now. And Bryce Young is a good example. Like, they haven't even said he's going to be the starter next week, which makes no sense to me. But Anthony Richardson, maybe the Colts are actually better with Anthony Richardson. Even if you want to argue that they are not, long term, this is such a bad decision. You look at what they did this past week with Joe Flacco. They did not score a touchdown. They scored 3 offensive points, which came after a 3-and-out on an interception. They had their fewest yards of the season. Their second fewest was their last time that Joe Flacco started for the Indianapolis Colts. They had their lowest EPA per play. I could go on and on and on. But the thing is, if they lost to they needed a fourth quarter comeback with Flacco. They lost to the Jaguars with him. They did not compete at all against the Vikings. What is your ceiling? Potentially sneaking in as a 7th seed? Get Anthony Richardson back in there. Get him the reps that he needs. Figure out this long term, because it was ugly with Anthony Richardson. It was boring and ugly on Sunday night without him.
I mean, the thing with Joe Flacco is that he was supposed to elevate the pass catchers, right? He was supposed to make us more confident in Downs and Pittman and even Alec Pierce, and that didn't happen at all. So if you're not winning, you're not moving the ball, and you're not elevating your other skill position guys, to your point, what even are we doing here other than just wrecking your rookie young quarterbacks?
They're playing a head coach, a quarterback that's older than their head coach. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, when you put it like that, man.
Yeah.
Other quarterback issues that are a little bit better. Over in Los Angeles, maybe Justin Herbert is becoming a thing for the Chargers. He's put up top 10 weeks in back-to-back weeks, top 10 games, I should say, in back-to-back weeks. Of course, the Monday night game notwithstanding. But they're starting to let him throw the football more. I mean, early in the season, it was about the run game for this Chargers offense. Obviously, it was great to see J.K. Dobbins get out to a quick start this year and play so well early in the season. But the last few weeks, we're starting to see the Chargers open it up more. Herbert only 27 attempts. I say only 27 pass attempts on Sunday. But before that, 3 games in a row with 32 or more passing attempts. He's starting to be efficient. In fact, this year, just 1 interception, 10 touchdown passes, just 1 pick for Justin Herbert. He's starting to elevate Ladd McConkey. Every now and then you get the busted coverage on Quentin Johnston that turns into a touchdown. And so, yeah, it's not going to look like it looked like previously when Herbert was throwing the ball all over the lot and they were a pass-first offense. This is still a run-first offense. But Justin Herbert's starting to work his way back in, get more comfortable, and Greg Roman's starting to realize what he has under center. You got to be excited about that. I mean, look, we knew that Herbert wasn't going to be the same level of guy, but I don't think we expected the fall off that we saw early in the season. So maybe, just maybe,
running a little bit more
he's starting to bounce back. Yeah, too. I mean, I don't think Greg Roman's going to confuse him with Lamar Jackson, but he is starting to run a little bit more, and you got to like that as well.
It's the hair.
All right. It's exactly. We're going to dive into the waiver wire coming up after this, and some do-overs as well. That's next on the NFL Fantasy Football Show. It's time for the waiver wire presented by YouTube TV. Florio, who should we be looking after this week?
Drake May, someone I'm really excited about for fantasy purposes. I don't love Bo Nix's matchup next week, but the schedule gets better after that. Aaron Rodgers, because the weapons around him are playing really well, and that helps elevate him. Daniel Jones played well this past week and gets a great matchup against the Panthers if you need a streaming option next week. Ray Davis still playing the secondary role, but he is an injury away and maybe carving out some standalone value of his own. Same thing with Tyler Algier, Kamani Vidal, Trey Benson. All of these guys are an injury away from being every week starters, so they are the type of running backs I like to have on my bench. Cedric Tillman needs to be picked up, please. He should not still be out there. Xavier Legette, I know Laquan was talking him up earlier. I like him a lot as well. Jerry Jeudy, Demario Douglas, Elijah Moore, because volume is what we care about. Ray McLeod, just in case Drake London cannot suit up next week. And then Hunter Henry, so much volume from the tight end position. Jatavion Sanders continues to see more volume. Agree with Laquan that if T. Higgins is out, Mike Gesicki is in play. If Higgins plays, get away from him. And then Theo Johnson getting more volume and has a good matchup next week against the Panthers. So he's in play if you need a tight end streamer.
Yeah, I've been, I had Theo Johnson kind of as a deep sleeper this year, and maybe if Daniel Jones is starting to come around, it could become a little bit more of a thing. Laquan, I want to ask you about Drake May though, because again, the Patriots sort of waited, right? They let Jacoby Brissett start the season out, then they made the switch, and win or lose, this offense is better with Drake May, and even in fantasy, there's a little bit of something there. It seems like.
Yeah, it's crazy because you see flashes of Josh Allen. Like, I don't want to make the comparison just strictly based on stats. It's the little nuances, the little mannerisms that he has in that pocket. When you see him in that pocket for 11 seconds trying to find his man, Josh Allen does this every single week. Even earlier in his career when we were watching the development of him taking that leap, there's some little things that he does that Drake May is on display right now and making this offense a lot better. The Patriots haven't had a guy really mobile out of the pocket like a Drake May, and he's able to scan that entire field, make the play, and more so, you're looking at this O-line, he can't really trust it yet. I think that last pick that he threw is because he rushed it, but honestly, you give him more weapons around him, he has a bright future in fantasy moving forward.
I mean, did not begin the year as the starter, but right now is actually 12th among quarterbacks in rushing yards, had 95 rushing yards on Sunday against the Titans. He kind of is what we want from a fantasy quarterback right now. Still a lot of development. They still need some help at the skill position, guys, but you're starting to see what the Patriots like about Drake May.
Next Josh Allen.
So do you like that, though, since he's in your division?
I don't like it for the Bills. I love it for Drake May and fantasy purposes. Like, there's going to be a lot of growing pains, but the flashes that he shows, I'm fully on board with Drake May.
Let's go.
That works. All right, let's do some fantasy mulligans. Some guys that we want to do over on. Maybe it's for this week. Maybe it's for the season. Define it however you like. But Laquan, who would you like to maybe get another chance at?
Dak Prescott. I mean, his ADP is starting to make a lot more sense for what it was in the summer because, man, if I would have known that the Cowboys had more storylines than the WWE right now, and none of them are good, I would have stayed away, man, because every single week it's something else. And you're having CD go out there playing hurt. I don't think he's going to be very useful to Dak playing hurt, and if he's out. So Dak Prescott honestly doesn't have that many weapons outside of CD Lamb that he could depend on other than Jake Fergie, but he's a tight end. He's always going to be the security blanket, but more so, I wish I could just take back as many shares as I had over the summer of Dak Prescott as my QB1, because now I'm shifting with Winston. I'm shifting with quarterbacks like Garner Minshew. I really wish that I didn't take as many shares as I did with Dak Prescott in the Cowboys storylines right now.
All right. Yeah, the Cowboys kind of a hot mess right now, but it's great, I guess, for sports talk radio, especially in the Metroplex area for sure.
Yeah.
Florio, who do you want to do over on?
Zay Flowers, because I was an absolute idiot for doubting he and the Ravens this past week. I had him as a sit and start him, sit him, and boy, did that not work out. The Broncos secondary got cooked like we have not seen before. Like on this play you see right here, I'm like, all right, it was one catch and run, like that could be had or whatever, but then it just kept going and it kept going, and it was a lot of, we saw some poor tackling. Like on this play right here, I don't know how Zay Flowers gets by 4 white jerseys, but he did. I have to take that L. I will no longer ever doubt Lamar or this Ravens offense or any of it outside of maybe Deontay Johnson, who I'm going to tell you to sit again next week. But besides that, yeah, start all your Ravens, and I am sorry if I told you to sit Zay Flowers.
It turns out Vance Joseph sort of brought this on himself. He said, we're going to try to focus on stopping the run, and we're going to force them to beat us through the air. And Lamar Jackson did that and did so this past week.
What a punishment.
Mine sort of goes for both the week and the season, and we talked about it a little bit earlier in the show, but it's the Colts. Man, whether it was us, getting really hyped about Anthony Richardson, whether it was us getting excited about Michael Pittman, whether it's us hoping that a change to Joe Flacco would turn things around this week, and it didn't. I feel like I've been had by the Indianapolis Colts this season. I mean, it has just been bad, frustrating, call it whatever you want. It's been ungood by any stretch of the imagination. And right now, there's just really no telling where they go from here. Do they try to go back to Richardson after just yanking the job away from him? Do they stay with Flacco after he was completely ineffective against, granted, a good Minnesota defense, but it looked bad on Sunday Night Football. Jonathan Taylor has been just sort of there for a good chunk of the season. Like, yeah, he's had some nice games, but you look around and he's number 24 among running backs right now. It just hasn't worked out at all. I don't think we were expecting them to be some sort of juggernaut offense. We weren't going to confuse them, with the Lions or the Eagles or somebody like that. But man, it was supposed to be a lot better than it currently is right now. I wish I could try that one over again for sure. All right. Let's end on a positive note, though, shall we? It is time for Moments We Love, presented by Barefoot Wine. We talked about Saquon Barkley and his superhuman feats of agility on the field. Not only were we amazed, A.J. Brown was just, he's like one of us, right? Like, he's just one of us. Laquan, I've never seen anything like this on a football field.
I'm just still amazed. I watched this at least 500 times, but the one takeaway I had was that everybody in the Giants front office needs to go on a permanent vacation, because there's nothing that Daniel Jones can do that isn't this impressive ever on the field. Just watch it. Oh my God. Like, how does he do this?
So when's the last time you think John Mara slept, Florio? He says he's not going to sleep well if he goes to the Eagles. John Mara hasn't slept since like July, probably.
He's been just standing in that same office just like he was in the offseason Hard Knocks ever since that day in March. A.J. Brown is one of the most physically gifted humans on the planet, and he was mind blown watching this play. Like, that just puts it into perspective how great of a play and an effort it was from Saquon Barkley. Look at this. You can watch football for the next 10 years and you won't see this happen again.
A reverse hurdle. Wow.
How does number 22 feel? Because he's going to be in that highlight for the end of time. Like, that highlight's going to get played forever, and number 22 is going to be seen ducking under Saquon Barkley missing a tackle.
It's like when Josh Norman got thrown to another planet by Derrick Henry. Like, that's what you become known for.
stiff-armed into the shadow realm by Derrick Henry. Man, I guess speaking of the shadows, we should probably retreat there at least for a little while. So then in the meantime, that is it. We are done. We appreciate you hanging out with the NFL Fantasy Football Show presented by Uber Eats. You know the drill. Tell two friends to tell two friends. Rate, review, and remember, the worst part about becoming a zombie is all the walking you have to do. Be safe, take care of yourselves, and we will talk to you tomorrow.